Today, Betty gets sentenced for hindering an investigation. Betty, not her real name, was charged in January 2024, pled guilty in March over at Cessnock Local Court. The case has had a couple of mentions since, where the sentencing was supposed to happen but didn't. However, today here at Cessnock Local Court, the sentencing actually happens. Well, sort of. It didn't 100% get finalised. By the way, Curry and Cessnock are part of the same local court circuit. It's the same magistrate. So today, basically, the magistrate will decide what the sentencing is going to be. Sentencing can be anything from 0 to the maximum, which is 2 years imprisonment. The hindering offence has a maximum penalty of 7 years imprisonment, but this is being sentenced in the local court, which has a jurisdictional limit, meaning the court can't give more than 2 years imprisonment. The process starts with sentencing considerations. This goes on for about 45 minutes. Betty's defence solicitor goes first. They talk for about 20 minutes. They talk about her life circumstances and motives around her actions. Then the prosecution delivers considerations for about 15 minutes, and they include things like the seriousness of the offence and the details of the hindering. The rest of the 45 minutes is a three-way conversation between the magistrate, the prosecution and the defence as they discuss the considerations and clarify points for the magistrate. The magistrate has already indicated that the case crosses the threshold for jail, and they will need additional time to consider what type of jail it's going to be. Meaning the magistrate will hear the considerations and the case will then get stood down until after lunch, when they will return to hear the sentencing. From where I'm sitting in the gallery, the discussion is focused on two main areas. First, it's about the seriousness of the hindering. They discuss what Betty did, and as well as what case law may or may not apply. So they are working through where her hindering falls on the scale of seriousness. By the way, the magistrate will be the person that decides where it falls on the scale in the end. The defence and the prosecution are only delivering considerations to assist the magistrate in their decision. The second area where discussion is focused is about deterrence. In particular, the general deterrence to the rest of the community, as well as deterring Betty. The discussion is leaning towards the case being on the serious end of the scale because of the expectations of the court and the community that people don't hinder an investigation. The magistrate will decide on a sentencing that sends a message to the rest of us that hindering an investigation is not okay. Here's where I'm going to make a possible interesting claim which you can disagree with. Let me describe who was inside the court during this 45-minute discussion. Yes, there's the magistrate, the prosecution, the defence, Betty's entourage. A group of police came to listen. Maybe detectives in suits, they had badges and guns. They don't say anything, they just listen and then left. There was me with my pen and my paper. The woman in front of me was waiting to be sentenced over drug possession, because here in Cessnock there's always a case that involves someone being caught with drugs in the car park at the jail. There's also a man and a woman in the gallery cuddling. I'm not completely sure why they're there. And then there's one last person in the gallery who I'm going to argue was an important person in relation to deterrence. The journalist. In my opinion, for deterrence to be successful, the public needs to hear about the case. What I saw at court was the magistrate, the prosecution and the defence applying the law, following the rules, discussing the case law and considering what was important to the community. But there were only a handful of people in that room that were exposed to these legal proceedings. I think it's critical that the journalists print the story and inform the community about what happened. Without that, deterrence I don't think has a chance. By the way, I have nothing to do with this journalist. I've never spoken to them. The journalist was there when court started at 9:30. They sat through the morning session where Betty's case came up and was stood down multiple times. The journalist was there after morning tea when the sentencing considerations were heard. Then during the afternoon session, which is after 2 p.m, when the magistrate gave the sentencing. They published an online story for a newspaper at 4 p.m. that afternoon. It was also printed in the newspaper the next day. The journalist was there all day to get the story. They were also there at the previous mention at Curry, where the case was adjourned and everyone walked away after waiting for a couple of hours only to discover nothing about the case. I agree with the contents of the story. I heard that information as well. In my opinion, the journalist kept the story within the rules of the court. There were some details said in open court which cannot be published. It relates to children. I noticed the journalist still wrote a detailed story and didn't publish that information. By the way, I didn't write it down either, and I'm not including it here. The court applied the law, the journalist printed the news, and so what's my contribution to this conversation? I think the openness of the court on this day benefited the community. Court allowing the gallery to be open so that people can hear how the court is being applied, I think benefits the community. The journalist disseminating the information to the public continues those legal proceedings and increases the chance that there will be an impact to the community by deterring others. I think an ongoing relationship between the court and the journalist is a benefit to the community. So yes, I spent the day watching the magistrate, but I was also watching what the journalist was doing. I didn't actually even notice Betty, really. I'm not really interested in the defendants, rather it's the court itself I'm more interested in. Telling that story is my contribution. Before I forget, it was 15 months imprisonment in the end. However, they need to all come back here next month to work out what type of jail it will be. Will it be jail at home or will it be jail?